Hey there, folks. Before you dive into this masterpiece of a production, let's set a few things straight. The opinions expressed here are like pineapples on pizza, and not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. They belong to the speakers and participants, and not to Witchcraft TV. The video is for entertainment and informational purposes only, because nothing screams fun like a good old disclaimer. Please don't take any of this as professional advice unless your profession is a laugh enthusiast or random fact collector. We can't be held responsible if you attempt anything wild after watching, like starting a llama farm or joining a yodeling competition. Viewer discretion is advised, especially if you're allergic to bad jokes or sarcasm. By watching, you agree that Witchcraft TV is not liable for any shenanigans that may ensue. Now, grab your popcorn and enjoy responsibly. And make sure you keep it right here on Witchcraft TV, www.witchcrafttv.online, where we are fair representation of all pagan, witch, and magic paths. Hey everyone, I hope everyone had a great, terrific 4th of July and everyone is safe. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning into the core class. And this is brought to you by Witchcraft TV, a free class for the public to talk all about the corecraft tradition right here on your very own Witchcraft TV. Today, I was going through my laptop and I came across the public domain of the Alexandrian Book of Shadows. And I wanted to go over some of the laws, the older laws that were put out. And I believe that this particular document was given to the internet in the 70s, I think, in different places. But nonetheless, it is here, and I'm going to do some review of it, keeping it educational. So make sure you keep it right here on Witchcraft TV's very own core class. And we are going to be having class every Sunday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And the other listings for time in your time zone are provided too on social media and also on our website at www.witchcrafttv.online. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the class. If you would like to jump on the class, there is a link there. It'll be the same link every week. It's the same link. The link can be found on our website under the Corecraft Tradition. If you go to the top right, you'll see the 3 little dots. Click that Corecraft Tradition. Scroll down a little bit, and you'll get to information where you can participate. And there's also plenty of links in our chat room and also on our social media and available. So here we go with the beginning of it, where we're going to talk about the old laws here. Let's see, the old law. And this is a really, really cool document. There's about 100 of these little excerpts here. And the first one, the law was made and ordained of old. And some of them I don't really understand. If you have a better discernment on these particular laws, you can chime in on the comments later, or if you're coming into the chat room, I'll keep checking to see if people pop in. The law was made for the Wicca to advise and help in their troubles. The Wicca should give due worship to the gods and obey their will, which they ordain, for it was made for the good of Wicca, as the worship of the Wicca is good for the gods. For the gods love the brethren, or the sisterhood of the Wicca. Not really sure why it was gender specific here with the brethren, and I'm definitely going to critique this whole thing too. I'm not sure why it was gendered the way that brethren of Wicca should be, that all people should be a little bit more inclusive. But I didn't write the document, but it's definitely been around for, let's see, 70, 80, 90, over it's probably a 60 or 70-year-old document, maybe even older than that, and a lot older than that, particularly as originally, it wasn't really given out to the public, so to speak. Number 4 is a man loveth a woman by mastering her, and I've always liked that. A man loveth a woman by mastering her. I mean, that's a whole conversation in itself. Like, how do you actually master the woman that you love? And if there's by chance you can do it, I'm sure trying myself. So should the Wicca love the gods by being mastered by them. We're talking about gods. A question that I often ask adepts and elders in various interviews is, did the gods create us humans, or did humans create the gods? And what I've come to the conclusion is, it's kind of like, I don't know if a paradox is the right word, but it's from the as above as below. It's like mirrored. I don't think there is an answer for that. I think it's kind of a reflection of both. I don't think that the gods would exist without humans, and I don't know if humans would exist without the gods. It's one of those. It's just one of those things. It's very, very good question to ask and contemplate. Like many other things that we contemplate, like the very purpose of existence to begin with. Number 6, and it is necessary that the circle, which is the temple of the gods, should be truly cast and purified, and that it may be a fit place for the gods to enter. Absolutely, consecration of sacred space, seen all over the place, definitely right here in the Corecraft traditions doing that. Number 7, and the Wicca shall be properly prepared and purified to enter into the presence of the gods. If you've ever been to a circle, and a lot of times you'll be sensed down, like they'll censor you with either sage or some kind of equivalent incense, and I think that's kind of a new thing. I believe that's a newer thing. Personally, I fancy the challenge where the blade is thrust to the chest, and how do you enter the circle? I always thought that was very, very pretty, very beautiful ritual. So number 8, with love and worship in their hearts, they shall raise power from their bodies to give power to the gods. Absolutely. Good stuff. Number 9, as has been taught of old. Number 10, for in this way only may men have communion with the gods, for the gods cannot help man without the help of man. Let's see. So now we are into, we check the chat room. Okay, nobody's in there. If you're stopping by, thank you so much for stopping by. Looks like there is a few viewers. And the high priestess shall rule her coven as the representative of the goddess. I say, so mote it be for that, definitely. Number 12, and the high priest shall support her as the representative of the god. Absolutely. And the high priestess shall choose whom she will, be he of sufficient rank to be her high priest. For as the god himself kissed her feet in the fivefold salute, laying his power at the feet of the goddess because of her youth and beauty, her sweetness and kindness, her wisdom and justice, her humility and generosity. Fivefold kiss is a beautiful ritual piece. It's very, very enchanting. Very, very enchanting. If you've never heard of the fivefold kiss, I challenge you, check it out. You can easily find the variation of it. Definitely something good to look at. So he resigned all of his power to her. So there's all kinds of stuff that's kind of, it's kind of like there, but I'm going to try to get to the good points here. But the high priestess shall ever mind that the power comes from him. It is only lent to be used wisely and justly. And the greatest virtue of a high priestess be that she recognize that youth is necessary to the representative of the goddess. So she will gracefully retire in favor of a younger woman should the coven so decide to counsel, it sounds kind of like a way to like proceed in that particular tradition. Alexandrian tradition, very, very pretty tradition of the craft. I really enjoy the ceremonial aspects that the Alexandrians utilize a lot. Ceremonial magic is very, very pretty and very dear to me personally. For a true high priestess realizes that gracefully surrendering pride of place is one of the greatest virtues, and that there be she will return to that pride of place in another life with greater power and beauty. Number 22, in the old days, when witchdom extended far, we were free and worshipped in all the greater temples. Very, very cool. Very, very true. And, you know, once we had like that Inquisition and people went into hiding and, you know, the witchcraft laws got repealed and, you know, we have this whole revival and everything. You know, it's a lot. We have a hell of a lot more freedom. But in these unhappy times, we must celebrate our sacred mysteries in secret. Now hold that thought right there. I know that it's, you know, some of the functions within the, you know, the infrastructure of the craft is definitely always in secret. Like go to that secret place and like, you know, it's historic. It's a historic thing because in the old days we had to do it because, well, we didn't want like the wrong people to find out what we were doing in our spirituality because, well, you'd be persecuted, you'd be pillaged, and they would take all your things and sometimes lock you in jail and hang you in a tree and, you know, all kinds of craziness. But in modern times, do we really need to meet in secret? I know that there's a lot of aspects, particularly, you know, spell work and some things that need to be secret because secrecy does yield power. But do we need to meet in secret anymore? Well, I guess I just answered my own question. Secrecy does yield power. So it be ordained that no coven shall know where the next coven bide or who its members be, save only the priest and priestess and messenger. And there shall be no communication between them, save by the messenger of the gods or the summoner. And only be safe, may the covens meet in some safe place for the great festivals. And while there, none shall whence they came, nor give their true names. Very, very, very true. Very true. You didn't want to be, and particularly in the old days, you didn't want to be spouting out the mouth of different people's names, because just by doing so, you may, you know, actually create big harm for that person. And it could be, you know, a matter of, you know, life and death. The good thing is in modern times, we really don't have that going on. However, I did just research and publish an article in the Witchcraft Herald where it talks about places in the world where the various forms of witchcraft and sorcery and divination are completely outlawed, and in some cases they will kill you for the practice. And that places like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, and there's other places in Africa, I believe. The 10 worst places to be if you're a witch. You can check it out in the Witchcraft Herald right there on www.witchcrafttv.online, in an article that was recently written up for that. So let me see here. To this end, that if any be tortured in their agony, they may not tell if they do not know. So it be ordained that no one shall tell anyone not of the craft who be of the Wicca, nor give any names or whom they bide, or any until invest our foes. Again, secrecy is power. And in the old days, you really didn't want to, you know, be exposing anybody. You know, let's see. No, nor did the coven be. And if you break any of these laws, even under torture, the curse of the goddess shall be upon them, so that they never be reborn on earth and may remain where they belong in the hell of the Christians. So it was kind of a way to say how serious this is, that it needs to have, you know, the secrecy. So very, very fortunate to be in this time period where we don't have to be hiding out so much, you know. But it is, yields power when, the secrecy does happen. Let each high priestess govern her coven with justice and love, with the help and advice of the high priest and the elders, always heeding the advice of the messenger of the gods, if he cometh. Let's see. Those, but it must be recognized that there will always be people who will ever strive to force others to do as they will. These are not necessarily evil. And if they oft have good ideas, and such ideas should be talked over in council. But if they will not agree with their brothers, or if they say, I will not work under this high priestess, it has ever been the old law to be convenient to the brethren and to avoid disputes. New covens. Yeah, there's all kinds of little, tidbits in this public domain Alexandrian book of shadows. Lots of good advice in here that is definitely part of, the very, what is the revival of contemporary witchcraft. And, it's just really good things to look at. So yeah, if you, any of the third may claim to found a new coven because they live over a league away from the covenstead or about to do so. So what I'm getting out of this is within the confines of the Alexandrian tradition. You can start your own coven when you acquire your third degree. Anyone living within the covendom and wishing to form a new coven shall tell the elders of their intention, and on the instant avoid their dwelling and remove to the new covendom. Very cool. Members of the old coven may join the new one when it is formed, but if they do, they must utterly avoid the old coven. And that just sounds like more of a traditional type of situation. But I have seen and heard where when there's a branch off from a coven, or when a coven is hiving off of itself and creating a new one, they don't have any contact with the old coven. And the reason why they do that is from what I understand, they do that so they can have their own independence and make their own decisions. So it's not like the priestess and the high priestess and priest are like still running it, their coven. Like there's new leadership. It's a new situation. The elders agree, meet for the great festivals, be for truly in peace and brotherly love. Splitting the coven off means strife. So for this reason, these laws were made of old, and may the curse of the goddess be on anyone who disregard them. So be it. Ordained. Grimoire. If you would keep a book, let it be in your own hand to write. Let brothers and sisters copy what they will, but never let the book be out of your hands, and never keep the writings of another. And that's kind of like, and the old days, you had your book of shadows. You wrote it in your own hand. You write these things out. And in some instances, I've seen different practitioners write it in red, and things like that. Book of Shadows is really cool. It's really cool. It's a personal grimoire. For it be found in their hand of right, they may be taken and arraigned. Let each guard his own writings and destroy them whenever danger threatens. Learn as much as you may by heart, and when danger is past, rewrite your book and it be safe. Yeah, anytime that you can memorize, different things in your craft, do so. When you do so, it's kind of embedding into your subconscious, and can readily affect the work that you're doing, outside. The first ritual that I ever memorized is the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is something taken out of the Golden Dawn magical tradition. But it's one of those things where at first I had it in a book of shadows, and I used to do the LBRP from reading it right out of the book, and from doing it so much, it's been embedded into the subconscious, and that's really where it needs to be. Another example of a very, very pretty bit of poetry that was written by Doreen Valiente, The Charge of the Goddess. If particularly if you're a priestess, or and you're studying the craft, you really want to memorize that. It's such a pretty thing. And one thing that I have noticed in different covens and traditions around the community is, regardless of what tradition you are, regardless of your coven, it seems like every coven, and I know we're not supposed to have like dogma. There is no dogma in the craft, the infrastructure of any type of craft. But it's interesting enough that every coven that I've come in contact with, the majority of them all recite Doreen Valiente's charge of the goddess, along with other things. So that's very, very cool. So yeah, memorization of things. Let's see. Learn as much as you may by heart. For this reason, if anybody died, destroy their book. They have not been able to. Yeah, if you memorize everything, you don't, and like we were talking about, historically in the old days, in the older days, historically, 100 years ago, you really wanted to memorize this stuff, because being caught with a book like that, it just seems like you could lose a lot. You could get in a lot of trouble. They could be stealing your stuff and taking your livelihood and putting you in jail and hanging you up on a tree and all of these things. So that's why it seems like it was very, very, it seems like they were saying, memorize your book, keep you safe, keep the book safe away from people. Okay. For, and it be found as clear proof against them. Right. You get caught with your book, you're in trouble. These days, it's not so like, it's not as serious to, get caught with a book, because these days you're allowed to have, a book of shadows. It's not illegal to have a book of shadows. But so yeah. And our oppressors know well, ye may not be a witch alone. Right. So all their kin and friends be in danger of torture. So destroy everything not necessary. If your book be found on you, it is clear proof against you alone, and you may be arraigned. Let's see. Keep all thoughts of the craft from your mind. Persecution, and this is like a header here, persecution. So I'm thinking maybe that's what they were saying, if you were being, because they used to torture people, like they used to like do torture to like confess, and all of these things. So this is kind of like a historic, it seems like a historic writing or document of what has been, and there's lots of things like that's public and available. But what has been, I think more importantly is what is now. Where are we now? And that's the real thing. But to know where we are now, I think it's always important to know where it has been, the spirit of what is, witchcraft and the craft itself. If the torture be so great to bear, say, I will confess, I cannot bear this torture. What do you want me to say? They try to make you speak of the brotherhood. Do not. But they try to make speak of impossibilities, such as flying through the air, consorting with the Christian devil, or sacrificing children, or eating men's flesh. Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind when they're talking about flying through the air is where that idea came from. The whole idea of witches on brooms, where did it come from? And the best, and where it came from is, well, I think it's a multitude of a few different things. One was, in the old days, particularly pagans used to jump up and down on brooms during, the planting seasons and things, and jump up and down as a form of sympathetic magic to show the crops how high to grow. Another variation of the flying on the witches' brooms comes from an ointment that was rubbed as like a salve, and the salve was rubbed all over your body before you went to the Sabbath, and it would contain like I'm pretty sure belladonna was in there. I don't know all the ingredients by heart, but I know that there was some illegal drugs in there too, which is basically flying to the Sabbath. So you're flying to the Sabbath, and that's how kind of that whole thing of witches flying around, because you're actually flying to the Sabbath, with the flying ointment, and then you had the hobby horse where you're showing the crops how high to grow, because it was kind of like all together. Now we have all of those things, but that what it's reminded me about flying to the Sabbath. Okay, number 70, going into that, be sure if steadfast you go to the pier, I think it's pier, drugs will reach you, and you feel not, you go to death in what lies beyond the ecstasy of the goddess. That is something that I really don't understand. I don't understand everything, in these excerpts, from the public domain, Book of Shadows from the Alexandrians, but um, definitely very, very pretty and definitely available. Let's see, tools to avoid discover. Let the working tools be ordinary things that any may have in their houses. Right, right, and that's explains, historically, how things were like in hiding and things, and that's really cool. Let the pentacles be of wax so that they can be broken at once or melted, and that's really, really cool. I know that in the Enochian style of magic and that particular tradition with different ceremonial magicians that practice with the Enochian, a lot of the sigils are made in wax too, and it's probably for the very, very same reason, so that you can easily, get rid of them. Just melt them down, and they are gone. Have no sword unless your rank allows it. So what that tells me is that, and I could be wrong, but in the Alexandrian tradition, which is a very beautiful tradition, I think at third degrees are allowed to have a sword. I feel like, which is very, very pretty. Personally, I've never used a sword in ritual magic. I usually use just a small blade, and there was a time where I used a feather. Okay, have no names or signs or anything on anything. I mean, that definitely doesn't apply these days, because if most places that I go in, friends or family or loved ones, there's just witchy stuff everywhere, so now there's definitely signs and things that, I'm very, very proud of my spirituality. So a lot of things have changed, in a 70, 80, 100-year time period. And that's phenomenal. I'm very, very happy about that. We live in a great time to practice the craft. Have no names or signs on anything. Write the names and signs on them in ink before consecrating them. Wash them off immediately afterwards. Let the colors of the hilts tell which is which. Do not engrave them lest they cause discovery. Right, because of the hiding thing. Ever remember you are hidden children of the goddess, so never do anything to disgrace them or her. Never boast, never threatened, never say you would wish ill of anyone. Look at that. Number 79. I like it. Great advice. I wish a lot of the practitioners in modern times would adhere to this. Never boast, never threaten, never say you would wish ill of anyone. Anyone. According to the archives of the Alexandrian tradition, never say you would wish ill of anyone. I guess that means that, you shouldn't be on social media saying that we all need to curse people. It just seems like the right thing to do. And obviously the integrity of the earlier Alexandrians who wrote this document. If any person not in the circle speak of the craft, say, speak not of me of such, it frightens me, 'tis evil luck to speak of it. Don't really understand that too much. For this reason, the Christians have their spies everywhere. These speak as if they were well affected to us. So if they would come to our meetings saying, my mother used to worship the old ones, I could go myself. So such as these ever denied to all knowledge, but to others say, 'tis foolish men talk of witches flying through the air. To do so, they must be as light as thistledown, and men say that witches all be blear-eyed old crones, so what a pleasure can there be at a witch meeting such as folks talk on? And say, many wise men now say, there is no such creatures. Okay, may the blessings of the goddess and God be on all who walk these laws which are ordained. If anybody has comments, feel free to do that. I'm going to continue to go through this valuables section. Let's see if the craft have any appanage. That's a word. I don't really know this word here. Appanage. That's a different word. Let all guard. I love these witchy words. Love them. Let all guard it and help to keep it clear and good for the craft. If the craft hath any appanage, I don't even know what that means. Let all guard it and help to keep it clear and good for the craft. Right. And let all justly guard all monies of the craft. And if any brother truly wrought it, 'tis right they have their pay, and it be just, and it's not be taking money for the art, but for good and honest work. And even the Christians say the laborer is worthy of his hire, but if any brother work willingly for the good of the craft without pay, 'tis but to their greater honor. So be it ordained. Quarrels, if there be any dispute or quarreling among the brethren, the high priestess shall straightly convene the elders, inquire into the matter, and they shall hear both sides, first alone and then together. Now this is an archive document for the Alexandrians, particularly for that particular tradition. But man, number 92 really needs to come to the surface for the broader community. Come on, we need to implement this, because we definitely have an assortment of elders, and there's definitely a network and a big, huge web of the elders. And man, have I had some disputes and quarrels with people, and now it's just gotten downright nasty. We should be better than this. So yeah, big kudos to the earlier Alexandrians that wrote this document, talking about how the elders would inquire and both sides could be heard, so for better resolution, and it would probably alleviate a hell of a lot of senseless bickering in the community in a time when unity is very important, and they shall decide justly, not favoring one side or the other, right? But recognizing that people who can never agree to work with others, but at the same time, there'd be some people who cannot rule justly. To those who must be chief, there is one answer. Void the covenant or seek another one, or make a covenant of your own, taking with you those who will go. That's always an option, right? Seems like something that just should be. To those who cannot rule justly, the answer be, those who cannot bear your rule will leave you. Pretty much. For none may come to meetings with those whom are variants. So when either cannot agree, get hence, for the craft must ever survive, so it be ordained. Yes, it must ever survive, so mote it be for that, for sure. In the olden days when we had power, we could use the art against any who ill-treated the brotherhood, but in these evil days we must not do so. For our enemies have devised a burning pit of everlasting fire, into which they say their God. Cast it all the people who worship him, except it for the very few who are released by the priest spells masses, and this should be chiefly by giving monies and rich gifts to receive his favor, for their great God is ever in need of money. Very, very true. If you go to the church and they pass around the little basket of your offerings, we're very, very true, even now, and even historically. So yeah, let's see. But as our gods need our aid to make fertility for man and crops, so is the God of the Christians ever in need of man's help and search out to destroy us. Their priests ever tell them that any who give our help are damned to this hell forever. So men be mad with the terror of it. But they make men believe that may escape the hell if they give victims to the tormentors. So for this reason, I'll be forever spying, thinking, and I can catch but one of these Wicca, I will escape from this fiery pit. It just seems like a lot of some rhetoric that was written for, in comparison to a much more oppressive time for people who practice the craft, much more oppressive time. While we are few indeed, so be it ordained. While we are few indeed, well, I will say, number 106, we are no longer few indeed. There is now, I think, 1.5 billion pagans and witches on this planet, according to our evil friend, Mr. AI. That shall, number 107, that none shall use the art in any way to do ill to any. Number 107, I'm going to say it one more time because I really like this. I really like the idea of not using, the craft in any way to do ill to any, which kind of conflicts with some other poems that are, around, particularly, when I first started in my 20s, where it's, I think I heard something like, unless, it was a little excerpt that says, unless it be in self-defense, never scorn unless it be in self-defense, or never smite another unless it be in self-defense. I mean, within the confines of, this being self-defense, I think it's probably okay. But to use the art in any way to do ill to anyone, I agree with you, 107, and I agree with the early writers of the Alexandrians that wrote this document for 107. However much they may injure us, harm none, and no times many believe we exist not. Right? That this law shall ever continue to help us in our plight. No one, however great an injury or injustice they receive, may use the art in any way to do ill or harm any, but they may, after a great consultation with all, use the art to restrain Christians from harming us brothers, but only to constrain them and to never punish. Let's see. Let me go through some more of these. I don't know how many's here. I know we've been on for a little while. Let's see. I'm just gonna go over this one here. Never accept money for the use of the art, for money ever smeareth the taker. To sorcerers and conjurers and the priests of the Christians, whoever accept money for their use of their arts, and they sell pardons to let men escape from their sins. That's deep. And another thing to keep in consideration is that if you're out there and you're like selling spells for money and all that stuff, what's really going on? Are you doing it for the money, or are you doing it to be healing something or helping something? So it's almost like when you accept money for your craft, you are cheapening the craft itself. You're cheapening the craft. The only exceptions that I've ever seen and can fathom is a tarot card reading. But not as these. If you accept no money, you will be free from temptation to use the art for evil causes. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. So there's lots more on this. And I'll try to get some of this information put up in the Witchcraft Teachings core group. I may even throw the entire public domain Alexandrian Book of Shadows on the Witchcraft TV website. I think that's what I'm going to do. And we can kind of go over it and, see what's going on, seeing how historically these writings can be useful in modern times and why it's no longer applicable, I think is a very, very good situation. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this week's core class, where we digested some of the Alexandrian traditions, old archived public documents. Make sure you keep it right here on Witchcraft TV, where we're a fair representation of all pagan witch and magic paths. I am Harold Sanford, the Lone Wolf Carter III. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday night and a great week. I'll see you next Sunday night, same place. So blessed be, and I'll see you soon.